I've just been talking with some church leaders recently, and there's kind of a move to disconnect even further from the Old Testament and just embrace the New Testament. And really, I just don't know anybody who would go in there and buy a trilogy and think that they could just start with the third book and feel confident that they would understand everything that's happening. Because that's what you're doing when you cut out 2/3 of the Bible, take out the Old Testament, which is really just the Jewish scriptures. We don't call it the Old Testament in Hebrew. And then think you're just going to dive into the New Testament and understand everything. I mean, even on a personal level, if you met someone, let's say you met your spouse, and then you didn't know her as a child, right? Let's say you met her in her 20s or something. And so you missed 20 years of her life. And what you want to do, if you really want to feel like you know her, is get old, picture albums and sit and talk to, family, tell me what she was like when she was young, whatever, because you're going to understand her so much more than if you just walk and be like, oh yeah, I just met this person, they're 30 years old and I just feel like I know them because, we both like drinking coconuts and whatever. So the bottom line is, in the same way, if you think that you're going to understand the minds of these Jewish men who wrote the New Testament without understanding what was going on in their head, because what was going on in their head was the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, then it's just, to me, it blows my mind that people consider that. But having said that, if you want to understand the Bible better, then you want to read the Bible, beginning in Genesis, and take that journey with the Jewish people and understand what God wasn't wasting thousands of years with the Jewish people and then finally gave up and started over. He was doing something. He was creating a grid. If Yeshua had come to Africa or to, Europe or something, they would not have had the grid to understand why they needed salvation. The Jews were looking for a Messiah. Nobody else was looking for a Messiah. How do you even know you need salvation? How do you even know what sin is? I mean, essentially the Mosaic covenant was not about, it was essentially a test for you to fail. Like when you take a test, when you take COVID, okay, a COVID test or a cancer screening or whatever, the test is given for you so that if you have cancer, you fail the test. It shows up, you have cancer, now you can take care of it. If you never take the test, you don't know what's wrong with you. How do you know how to even get saved out of it? So the idea of understanding Hebraic roots will really help you understand God more, because if you can see what God has done in the past, this is another thing, if you're going to date someone and you know that they've had boyfriends or girlfriends before or whatever, let's say I'm going to date a guy, okay? I want to know how he treated those other girlfriends after the fact to know if I even want to get into this. Is this a guy that's kind of look, it didn't work out and, I'm going to move on and he was still kind and whatever. I'm like, okay, this guy's, but if he was a total jerk and he just was absolutely that terrible person, whatever, and then why in the world would, so if you think that God was oh, I'm going to embrace Israel and I love Israel and he wrote all this beautiful poetry about Israel, and then at some point he's right? Really, that's the God that you want to serve? That's the one that what happens, at what point do you sin so much that you're, oh, only Israel can sin enough that God will give up? You're Gentiles are somehow this evolved state of human that God's not going to give up on them? So in the same way, when you see the fact that in reality, God has stuck with the Jewish people despite how foolish they were, then how much more do you have confidence in your relationship with God? Wow, God, you stuck out because you said you would. Then I now trust that you will with me. You said if the sun and the moon stop working, okay? So next time you go out and look and see the sun and the moon and the ocean waves and the tide, if that stops happening, if they cease to exist, then you will know that Israel will cease to be a nation in front of me. So he's saying, when that stops, that's when you know I've given up. And in the same way, you can apply it to you, just not instead of Israel, but in addition to Israel, because this is the guy that I'm choosing to be with.